Dealer Merchant Services is our featured supplier guest today, and the topic right there on the screen is let your customers pay the majority of your credit card expense without disrupting CSI. To get things underway, here now is Doug Austin, our CEO. Doug, take it away.
Welcome, everybody. We're glad you're here today for yet another session of our Innovative Supplier webinar series. We started this almost 2 years ago now to bring innovative, creative, highly competitive suppliers to our client base and to other folks that might want to join in. Our objective was really to address suppliers that can address expenses on the expense side, the audit recovery side, and new revenue side as well. We've had a lot of success with this series. We plan to continue it. And I'm really delighted today to bring a real quality organization to the table in Dealer Merchant Services. Amber Lee and Laura have been providing top-notch service to our clients and have been generating significant savings. And I'm sure you will benefit greatly from this session. So Amber Lee and Laura, take it away.
Doug, thank you so much. We're thrilled to be here. So this is a very hot topic in 20 groups right now, and it's about passing along your credit card fees to your customers. So we're thrilled to be here. We have over 75 years in automotive. I've got Laura from my team on the line. She is a former general manager and controller, so she works very closely with our dealerships' accounting departments. And then I also have Janine Drake. She's 29 years in the business, and she heads up all of our training and launches, as well as our Dealer Merchant Services University, which is certified over 4,500 staff across the country with our word tracking and our philosophy and the strategy. So we're thrilled to be here. Today, we will talk about a few things that are really important. And the very first part of that is the legal changes. We'll also talk about credit card expense awareness. Laura will give us some insight from a controller's perspective. We'll talk about how it works. We will talk about CSI and make sure we cover that because we know how important it is. The potential savings that you could see at your store, and then, of course, best practices for implementation. Before I begin, I want to tell you about a short history lesson. So for 40 or 50 years in your card brand agreements, you could not charge a customer anything differently if they used a credit card. But that all started to change in 2010 with the Durbin Amendment. It was a part of the Dodd-Frank Act. It started regulating debit card processing costs. In 2017, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case that determined that businesses have a First Amendment right to be able to communicate to their customers that if they use a different form of payment, they could save money. In 2018, there was a class action lawsuit against Visa and MasterCard and some of the big banks that resulted in a $6.4 billion settlement. You can see a couple of states here on the board, but today in 2023, only 2 states remain with a ban on surcharging, and that's Connecticut and Massachusetts. If you'd like some information specific to your state, please reach out in the chat box and put the state that you're in, and we'll give you some updates on what's going on specific to your state. We have 4 survey questions for you today, and it's really to bring some awareness around spend and what we're seeing in the marketplace. So our first question is, what do you currently spend per month to accept credit cards in your store? We see on average anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a month. But we also see some that have no idea. And it's important that we build some awareness around how much you're actually spending.
Great. Y'all keep voting. We have about half of you have voted on what you're currently spending per month to accept credit cards. We'll let it go for just a little bit longer. Thank you guys for voting. It looks like right now the majority are between $7,500 to $10,000 a month. That would be option C, followed by over $10,000 a month. Just got time for just a few more if you want to go ahead and vote and participate. But thank you for those that have participated. David, if you'd like to share the results. Yeah, so 8 of 15 have participated and the majority fall in the $7,500 to $10,000 per month category. Thank you guys so much. David, if you'll pull that down. So we hear from our dealers all over the country that this really is a big 20 group topic right now. In fact, one of our clients won Best Idea just a couple of weeks ago with the savings analysis on their program with us. But we do like to create awareness around this expense because A lot of dealers, CFOs, they don't really know what they're spending. And one reason is there's only 2 OEMs that have an actual line item on their financial statement for credit card processing expense. Most dealers lump it into outside services, which we know is a catch-all for all different kinds of expenses, as I'm sure Doug can speak about. But there's no invoice. There's no check to sign. This is something that's debited straight out of your bank account right at the end of the month when your controller is their very busiest. And so for those of you out there that do know how much you're spending to accept payments from your customers, you might not know your effective rate. And your effective rate is how much of every dollar do you get to keep when somebody pays you with a credit or a debit card. And what we see in automotive is typically a 2% effective rate. So most of you dealers out there are only keeping about 98 out of every $100 when somebody pays you with a credit or a debit card. Survey question number 2. When was the last time you or somebody on your team or at your store actually reviewed your credit card processing statements? We have some that actually review it every month, some that maybe look at it every 6 months. Some people haven't looked at it maybe once in the last year, and a lot of people typically can't remember. And I know as people are looking at expense control across the board in 2023, there's a lot more that are looking at it. 43%, we've got about half that have participated, and 43% say they review it every month, with tied between 6 months and sometime in the last year coming in tied for second. If you want to share those results, David. So this is where all you dealers fell on who's actually taking a look at their statements. So awareness is really important. You want to go ahead and bring that down. Thanks.
It's also interesting because we see so many of these, and it's really, determining that you think you're paying a certain basis points over your interchange. But once we look at these, I can't tell you how many times we find fees that they weren't aware of. We saw one the other day that was $300 in fees monthly, and it didn't have even a description or anything about the fee itself. So it's always a worthwhile exercise to take a look at these statements and have somebody like us take a second look. So we'd be happy to do that for you.
Yeah, our webinar offer today is to do a complete analysis of your merchant statements. We know they're confusing by design. We can help you determine what is your true effective rate. So how much of every dollar do you get to keep when somebody pays you with a debit or a credit card? We can give you some tips just to save with your current processor, even if this isn't a strategy you're ready to adopt. Tips like, accepting a PIN debit and making sure your chip terminal, your terminals accept the EMV chip. You also want to get ahead of the price increases every April and October. And yes, it is April. And yes, there was a slight rate increase from Visa in April. So we know they're going to be raising their rates slightly at least twice a year. So please feel free to reach out after this the webinar. We also have some buy one, get one free terminals. So if you'd like to talk about that offer, we'd love to chat with you about it.
You could put in the Q&A analysis. We simply need 3 months worth of statements, and then we can take a closer look at exactly what you're paying. And frankly, if you don't go with our strategy, we know that Strategic Source can negotiate those on your behalf, as well as we can at least show you where there's some opportunities to negotiate with those folks. So you may have heard the term cash discount, and I want to communicate with you guys exactly the difference between cash discount and compliance surcharge. So when you look at a cash discount, you would have to raise all of your prices in the dealership. There's no electronic way to give your customer a discount. They must have cash or check in their wallet. You have to change all of the information in your DMS on every transaction. And frankly, it's not compliant in finance. You can't raise the price in your system on a down payment. However, with a compliance surcharge, you only increase the price if the customer chooses to use their credit card. You're giving them a true payment choice, so the debit equals cash price is absolutely vital as it pertains to automotive, because you, A, cannot surcharge on a debit card, and B, you have to be able to really give them an electronic option for cash for CSI reasons. Nothing changes in your DMS, and it works in all dealership departments and can be customized for the store. So how does it work? All items, ROs, parts invoices, and down payments would now have a cash price and a credit price. Anything that is paid by a credit card is considered the credit price, and anything that is paid by cash, check, or debit is considered the cash price. So again, one huge differentiator is that we offer an electronic option for the cash price. We know your customers aren't walking around with cash or checks very much anymore, so debit equals cash. As it sits today, you've got a $100 repair order, and as Laura mentioned, you've got a 2% average effective rate across automotive, which means you're keeping only 98 of every $100. With a dual price program, the customer chooses how to pay. So if they use their credit card, that cost becomes 103. The dealership now keeps all 100 of that RO because the customer pays the processing costs. Or if the customer uses their debit card, the RO remains 100. The dealership keeps 99 because now you're only paying 1% on debit. Your RO doesn't change. Your DMS doesn't change. Everything happens with the credit card machine itself. It does all the heavy lifting. It's custom programmed for the store, and it's backed by a U.S. patent. And it also is what keeps you in compliance because it knows the difference between a credit card and a debit card. It reads the first 8 numbers, and therefore it knows not to add a 3% surcharge for any debit cards. So this is our third survey question. Are you seeing cash and credit prices in your market? We know that companies like Venmo and Cash App are wildly popular at this point, and they've adopted this same policy. It's 3% additional for credit, nothing additional if you send money via your bank account. And they have over 120 million users in those 2 platforms alone. I'm sure you're seeing it in gas stations, in restaurants. So tell me, yes or no, where are you seeing cash and credit prices in your market?
So the poll is up, and we've actually got some options for them to choose where they're seeing it. So about 75% are talking about gas stations that are definitely charging cash and credit prices. The municipalities, they've been doing it for years. They exempted themselves from the law against it. Restaurants, 40% you have seen it in restaurants. So it absolutely is something that, in fact, when we do these webinars, we kind of keep up with the participation. And a couple of years ago, we weren't seeing very many people at all that were seeing this as in their market. And now the poll is ridiculously off the chart that most everybody is seeing it and they're sharing where they're seeing it. So we know it's something that's drastically changed just in the last couple of years. Thank you so much. Over 50% of you participated. If you can share the results, you can kind of
surprised no Venmo and Cash App users on the webinar today.
Right? 71%. Yep, we've all seen it at gas stations for a long time. Well, thank you for participating. David, if you could take that poll down. Thank you.
So once dealers understand the legal and how it works, they of course want to know how their customers will react. And we understand the importance of CSI, but just like we saw, the way that people pay for things is changing. We also know that 87% of consumers have a debit card in their wallet. So when you give them that debit equals cash choice, it really is that true transparency of choice. And again, I'd mentioned the Venmo and Cash App, 120 million users on those 2 platforms alone.
So what could your savings look like at your dealership? So let's look at this chart just to kind of show you some easy math. And this is from our book of business and our experience and what we see with our dealers that have a typical 2% effective rate, what kind of savings they have. It's anywhere between 70 and 75% of their previous credit card processing expense. So as a great example, take a dealership, which a lot of you guys shared. We're spending approximately $10,000 a month just to accept payment from their customers. We believe that this program can bring your expense down to $2,750, saving you over $7,000 a month, but most important, over $260,000 over the next 3 years. And that's real net profit savings. So the numbers really are difficult to ignore.
Let's talk a little bit about best practices for implementation. The most important piece of this is knowing that it is not a DIY type of a project. You cannot simply add a 3% line item to the RO and try to do it yourself. There's 3 major components of compliance. The first is you must use a third-party processor, so a partner like us that's at an arm's length. Second, you cannot profit in any way from the additional 3%. It must be a straight pass-through. the 3% comes in, and the 3% must go straight out. And lastly, you have to have signage at the cashier and the entry point. Of course, we'll provide all that signage, and ours has actually been approved by Visa. We'll also register you as a surcharge merchant with the card brands, and we'll make sure you've got all of the appropriate disclaimers on your credit card receipts, as well as walking you through putting on your repair orders, your parts invoices, and your buyer's orders. The other piece of this is communicating both prices upfront to the customer is absolutely vital to make sure that you don't have CSI issues. You don't want your customers surprised when they get to the cashier. You actually want to estimate right out of the gates at the credit price. So Mrs. Jones, your RO today is $103 if you use your credit card, but it's only $100 if you use cash, check, or debit. How would you like to pay? So the estimate will represent the credit price, and the repair order will represent the cash price. And so for us, with our Dealer Merchant Services University, we will make sure everybody understands the word track, and all of that training is part of what we offer. But the word track piece of it is absolutely crucial, and we have some tools to help your service advisors do that. We do have an optional text to pay and email to pay feature. It's simply a way to send a secure payment link to your customers. So that's optional. We can certainly talk through that if you have any questions. You can put in the chat text to pay, and we can answer all of those. The other piece of this is flat rate pricing that's required. So we would become your new processor. And you can see in the background, there's over 400 different interchange rates. You may see them on your statements, and they're confusing by design, like Laura said. So for you to make sure that you're in compliance for the flat rate, you would pay 3% on credit, which is paid for by the customer, and then the dealership pays 1% on debit to be able to give them this cash price. So new terminals would be required. Again, with our relationship with Strategic Source, we offer the buy one, get one. And it's really something that when you're going and you have to buy new machines, it's an option to maybe go to self-cashiering with your service advisors, but they're $3.99, they're one time and you own it. And again, they're custom programmed for the store. I think it's also important to note that if you wanted to start slowly within the store, you could start just in finance and then move to service. So we can certainly talk through some of that. But we provide a truly risk-free guarantee, meaning that you don't have any long-term contracts with us. If you decided that you wanted to go back to traditional processing, we could easily flip you back at a rate or below what you're currently paying. And you wouldn't have to change machines or providers again. But if in fact you did decide you wanted to cancel, again, only 30 days written notice, and we would even buy back your machine. So it really requires us to put our money where our mouth is. The best practices for implementation, as I talk through on the compliance piece, we'll walk you through that. But we'll find out how many machines you need, go through a simple underwriting process. We'll go through a pre-launch training and checklist, get a list of all of your employees, put them in our Dealer Merchant Services University, as well as meet with your department heads, talk about wholesale parts, extended warranties, things like that. And then we'll find a time to launch and install, and you'll start saving immediately. We had a large Ford store in Florida. They saved $765 on the very first day. We had a big 10-store group in North Carolina. They saved $44,000 in the very first month. So just like Laura said, the savings are significant, but they're also immediate. This is our last and final survey question. Where do you find yourself on the adoption curve? We know that this is the only fee that you can now legally charge your customers that you aren't yet charging, but we also know it's still early on in automotive. So where do you find yourself as far as on the adoption curve? The interesting thing too about this is that we've had many conversations with dealers that are laggards or late majority 2 years ago, and then now they're starting the program, which is pretty exciting. So maybe you won't be a late majority for long.
We've got more early majorities on our call today. 57% say they fall in the early majority category. We've got one innovator, which is always great to hear about. So if you want to go ahead, thank you. Again, thank you for participating. David, if you'd like to share those results. So the majority are early majority. Thank you guys for participating. David, if you could close that out.
The cool thing is we've had the privilege of working with Doug and his team at Strategic Source. We currently work with 41 Strategic Source clients, and we are having demos with those clients, new clients all the time. But almost $1 million in savings, real dollar savings for his clients to date for the last 19 months. So pretty exciting stuff. we'd love to see some more clients that we can help from Strategic Source, but we love that partnership.
And if you want to look and see kind of what your savings might look like, you can see some of the dealership sizes and the locations and the number of rooftops, how long they've been with the program, and the savings. So please feel free to reach out if you'd like to talk about any of these kind of success stories.
Okay, so I'm ready for questions if you are. Here is all of our contact information. Please follow us on LinkedIn and connect with us. But our emails are Amberly and Laura at dealermerchantservices.com. If you want to send us 3 months worth of statements, we would be more than happy to run an analysis for you. We simply go over those numbers in about 15 minutes. But as well as if you wanted information on your state, you just let us know what you might need from us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we had one request that you go back to savings chart, if you wouldn't mind. So I guess we want to see where they might fall on the savings chart, Amberly.
Sure.
Like she mentioned, if you want to throw into the Q&A, just all you'd have to type in is the word analysis, and we'd be happy to take a look at your statements. We'll reach out for you the last 3 months of those. So we have this question, is this something that can be offered with buy here, pay here?
Yes, absolutely. We have a buy here, pay here currently, and we'd be happy to connect you with them. So, and as a matter of fact, we're talking with the National Independent Auto Dealers Association. I spoke with them today to be able to help some of those more independent buy here, pay here and independent dealerships. So we'd be happy to help you with that. Absolutely.
Amberly, did we land on the right slide here for the savings chart?
I was having a little trouble to get it to do what I wanted it to do. So let me see if I can't try to.
About 4 pages back, I think.
There we go.
Yeah. So find your estimated expense and you can kind of take a look at what your 3-year savings would look like. All right. So here's another question. You mentioned your Dealer Merchant Services University training. How much does that cost?
That's part of our program fee. So everything would be included. And so we would train and certify all of your staff. You also have that when you have any new staff that come on board, as well as refresher courses, new hire training, all in perpetuity. So as long as you're our client, it's part of what we offer. So again, we certify all of your staff. We have over 4,500 that we've certified so far.
Perfect. So what type of commitment is your contract?
So no long-term contracts. I don't know of any dealers that sign long-term contracts. So, but for us, it's simply a 30-day written notice. It is a 3-year term, but it's 30 days written notice with no cancellation fee. So again, we really have to put our money where our mouth is as far as that goes.
And a follow-up there, what if I'm in a long-term contract right now?
Great question. So if you're in a long-term contract, I haven't seen them to be too egregious, but I see about a $400 cancellation fee typically. And if you can outweigh, if you think it's worth canceling, you may have a $400 cancellation, or you may just write it out and do a minimum processing, which is typically only $25 a month. So happy to help you take a look at those agreements and see if it makes sense to just cancel or if you just write out the contract.
And of course, these are things that Strategic Source is a pro at and can definitely walk you through those. So Doug and his team can certainly help you handle that piece of it. Okay.
Emily and Laura, would you like me to forward the slides for your contact information, or would you like me to stay on this chart for a while?
Oh, yeah, we can go to my contact information. That would be great.
All right. So here's another question. My bank says they can do surcharging. Should I look at them?
Well, certainly you should look at all options and make sure you're making the right choice for your store. And I would tell you that there are a couple of banks that we've seen that are doing it. But the only thing that I would caution anyone is to make sure you've got a great training program and rollout. I think that's really where we shine. We have almost 300 dealers across the country now at this point, and we really understand all the nuances and complexities of the space. And therefore we work closely with your accounting department. We joke that if the controller's not happy, nobody's happy. So Laura makes sure that her team is working with your accounting team. And then we work closely with the service advisors. We have people from our team actually on site at the store working with your service advisors, working with your accounting department, working with your finance managers. So I would caution anyone that They just ship you a box of machines and wish you good luck and give you a 1-800 number, because you could be walking into a hornet's nest, because the keystone of making this successful is all about the presentation and communication with the customer.
All right. Oh, here's a good one. So you talked about the difference in cash discount and surcharge, but what is a convenience fee?
Great question. So a convenience fee is a little bit of a loophole as it pertains to the laws on adding percentages and surcharges to debit cards. And so they actually think that a convenience fee, you could add 3% to credit or debit. But what we recommend to our stores is that they keep the policy the same throughout the dealership. So 3% only on credit and then nothing additional on debit. And that's the way that we roll out all of our text to pay programs.
Okay. So Rebecca said, you mentioned this isn't a DIY. Why is that?
Because if you look at all of the different interchange rates, some of them are under 3% and some of them are over 3%. But the keystone of that is that you get charged a flat rate from us, from your provider, to make sure that you're in compliance and you don't profit. So the 3% has to come in and the 3% has to go straight out. If you just added this as a 3% line item, you would have no way of knowing exactly what the interchange fee is until the end of the month. And therefore, if it's less than 3%, then you're profiting on that spread, and that puts you out of compliance.
Great. Here's another good one. One of the people in my 20 group said they tried this once and it failed miserably. They lost lots of customers. What do you have to say about that?
No, I think it's really important. It's hard for me to say when you did this, right? Because there are some that have tried it many, many years ago, and the consumer conditioning has just changed since then. But the other component is making sure that it was done the right way. It's hard to say that if that other dealership was charging 3% on debit. Of course, if you're charging 3% on debit, you are going to have a customer service nightmare. And we've even had dealership groups come to us and say, you know, this merchant provider said that we could charge on debit. Well, that's all fair and well, but they don't understand automotive. And so we've unwound, for some of these groups, we've unwound some of those programs that simply just don't work. And so it's hard to say. There could have been no training. They could have been charging on debit. They could have just sent a box of machines and wished everybody good luck. You know, there's a lot of different things there that I'm a little unsure of based on who the provider was. But the training, making sure you don't charge on debit, those are the two key components of that.
All right, please be sure and throw your questions in the Q&A if you have a question for Amberly today. Here's another one. On your training, what if we have a new employee? How is that handled?
So every single month, you're going to get a savings analysis from us. So it's going to be an ongoing track, like the ticker of every single time you've got showing you your debit percentages, showing you how much you've saved that much, all of these different items. But every single month we reach out, we show you how much you've saved, but more importantly, we ask, do you have any new employees? Do you need a refresher course? Would you like for us to do a mystery shop for you and make sure that they're estimating at the credit price over the phone? Would you like to see some of our new tools, like our dual price calculator, for example, to help service advisors communicate both prices to the customer? So we're going to be reaching out every month, making sure that everything is going the way that we promised.
Amberly and Laura did a masterful job again today. I would tell you, in the audience, that 2.5 years ago, there was probably 1 in 100 dealers that were interested in this topic. And because we do card merchant processing analysis probably 60 to 70 times a year. So we are, almost every dealer that we work with has an interest in doing this. So just a few years ago, very little interest. Today, this is to the point that Amberly and Laura made. This is probably one of the hottest topics out there. So these folks know what they're doing. They've done it many times. They've done the rake. They know, where the mistakes can be made. But I'd encourage you to reach out to them and take them up on that free analysis. You've really got nothing to lose, a whole lot to gain. So thank you, ladies, for your contribution today. If you're interested in any of the information provided here, a deck or webinar, as David said, we'll have that on our website tomorrow. And if you're interested in a deck, reach out to Chris at 612-386-3898. We can get a deck to you, any assistance you need. Not a client of Strategic Source and are interested in attacking your expenses in a more methodical way, we're only too happy to help. So reach out to us, hills@strategicsource.com, or the phone number listed there. Be happy to help you, but thanks very much.
Doug, thank you so much for your kind words.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Amberly and Laura and Doug. And I'm going to bring up a post-session survey now. We'd love to get your feedback. Thanks, everyone, for attending today. And we look forward to you joining us on future webinars with Strategic Source. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.